Kia ora koutou and welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Sophie Gibson-Pinn and I am a Community Coordinator for Biosecurity with the Otago Regional Council. Before we begin, I'd like to let you know that this meeting is being recorded and will be made available for those who are unable to attend today. I'm pleased to introduce our speaker today, Sam Walton, who is a Senior Policy Analyst with the Otago Regional Council. Sam will be presenting on the Regional Pest Management Plan review. We also have Rob Wynn, Biosecurity Programs Team Lead, and Michelle Ewens, Terrestrial Biosecurity Specialist, on this call today to answer any questions. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat. We'll collect these and answer as many as possible at the end of the talk. I'll now hand over to Sam. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that introduction, Sophie. So I'll just bring up tonight's presentation. And you can see that okay? Great. Well, welcome everyone. So in tonight's presentation, I'm going to give an overview on our Regional Pest Management Plan review. So in this session, I'm going to cover what is a Regional Pest Management Plan. I'm going to outline the review process and the timeline, and that'll include when and how you can have your say on the plan process. I'm going to cover some of the things we are considering as part of the review and part of this engagement. I'll also cover the next steps, and that'll include how you can have your say and be involved with the process. And then, as Sophie said, we'll take any questions at the end. So what is a Regional Pest Management Plan? So a Regional Pest Management Plan identifies the pests in Otago that the Otago Regional Council will regulate through the life of the plan. So while there are many harmful and nuisance organisms and species in Otago, under the Biosecurity Act, which governs this process, it's only species that are included in the plan that are pests and that have rules that apply. And so the plan sets objectives for each pest that are designed to eliminate or minimize the impact on the things we value. So the impacts that we are trying to manage are those on production, environment, social, cultural, and human health values. So pests included in the plan must set an objective for what the plan is aiming to achieve, and they must be under specific management programs. So I'm going to cover off these programs and just give a brief explanation as to what they are. So we have what are called exclusion programs. And so these aim to prevent pests from establishing in Otago, and they apply to species that are not yet in Otago. The next program that we have is an eradication program. And so the aim of this program is to eliminate pests from the region, and this applies to species that are in small numbers in Otago. We also have progressive containment programs. And so the aim of this is to stop pest spreading and or to contain them into a certain area. and this program applies to pests that are not well spread in the region. We also have sustained control, and so the aim of this is to provide for the ongoing control of the pests and to reduce the impacts on environmental, economic, and cultural values, and the spread onto neighbouring properties. And so this objective or this program would apply to pests that are already well spread in the region. There are also what are called site-led programs. So this is where we have rules for specific pests that apply in that area. There are also what are called pathway management plans. And so these aim to reduce the way that pests are spread. And pathway management plans can prevent multiple species from establishing rather than managing pests individually. And I'll touch on these plans in a little more detail further in the presentation. So Council must show that managing pests in its Regional Pest Management Plan will be cost effective and that the management programs that it sets in its plan are achievable. And so what I have in this slide is an invasion curve. And whilst it looks a little complex at first, I'll try and explain how it works because it's a useful tool for how we decide which management programs we have in our plan. And so the invasion curve, it shows us how, as the infestation of a pest grows from low to high, the ability to prevent or reduce the impacts of that pest become more challenging, and the feasibility of controlling them and eradicating them drops, as does the cost of managing the pests also increases. So the invasion curve helps to inform which management program pest species will be included based on their level of infestation, their impact, and the feasibility and cost of control. So if we look to the left of the invasion curve, we see the species that are not in Otago yet. And these are the species that may be included in an exclusion program and which are under surveillance. So some of our examples include Chilean needlegrass, and until recently, African feathergrass, which was not present in Otago until recently discovered. And so that's a good example of where a pest in an exclusion program, if there is an incursion, the council has a plan in place to respond and control that pest. As we move to the right on the invasion curve, we see species that are in small numbers of localized population, and where it would be feasible to eradicate, these species would be in an eradication program. And some of our current examples in our existing plan are rooks, spiny broom, and wallabies. As we start moving further to the right and the curve goes up, we're starting to see species with a greater distribution and that are more abundant. And so for these species, the ones that can be contained may be managed in a progressive containment program. And some examples from our current plan include Plumeria and bird daisy. As the curve goes up higher, we start to see species that are more widespread and abundant. And so for these species, they are more appropriately managed under the sustained control program, as they are widespread, abundant, and examples from our current plan include rabbits, gorse, and broom. So as I mentioned earlier, a regional pest management plan, it identifies the pests in Otago that the council will regulate for the life of the plan And this plan can set specific management actions for both council and land occupiers. So the plan can set land occupier rules to control certain pests if they are present on someone's land. They can also require compliance inspections by council and council-led surveillance, monitoring, and control, alongside council's role in education and advocacy, as well as collaboration. So on this slide here, we have an example of a land occupier rule in our current plan. So under this plan rule, land occupiers must control feral rabbits densities on the land they occupy to level 3 or below on the modified McLean scale. And so that's the scale you can see on the right there, showing the different infestation levels of rabbits. So not meeting this rule means that a land occupier is non-compliant with the rule, and then this enables some enforcement powers available to council under the Biosecurity Act. So that there is just an example on how a land occupier rule can work under our current plan. The plan can also have what are called good neighbour rules. And so these are rules that can ensure that if a land occupier is doing their part and controlling a pest on their property, there is a way to make their neighbour also do the control on their property. So as an example, under our current plan, where property A has controlled the gorse on their rural property, under the good neighbour rule, property B must also control the gorse on their property that is within 50 metres of property A. So as I mentioned earlier, there are also pathway management plans. And so pathway management plans target how pests spread, and they allow for one set of rules to reduce the spread of multiple species rather than requiring a separate rule for each species. And so pathway rules can prevent the spread of a pest from one region to another or within a region. And they can include controls on the movement that may, in the case of water, be vessel movement, equipment, or hull cleanliness from region to region or within a region. And they're a way that, as I've said, we can prevent the spread of multiple pests. So now I'm going to give just a brief overview of the process and timeline for the Regional Pest Management Plan review, and also highlight some times when you can have your say on the plan process. Our current plan needs reviewed by 2029, and we have started the process early due to some known issues with the current plan. And so on the slide here, you can see some of the key dates for this process. Right now, we are undertaking our review. This includes the informal consultation. We're gathering information to help inform any updates we may make to the plan and to help prepare for a proposal for a draft plan that we plan to present to Council in November this year. And in February next year, as you can see on point 3 there, we intend to publicly notify proposal for a draft plan. And it is at this point where the formal consultation begins, and anyone can make a submission on the plan and later attend or present at the hearing that is scheduled for the middle of 2027. Following this, there will be a process for decisions, any appeals, and the aim is to have any changes to the plan take effect 2028. So as part of this review process, we are undertaking engagement with the public, our iwi partners, community groups, and stakeholders. So this has included the survey we had earlier this year and the engagement we are currently taking. Staff are also completing biosecurity impact assessments of the pests in the plan currently and the current rules, and helping to make recommendations on the proposed approach and the species to consider for an updated pest plan. Under the Biosecurity Act, we're also required to undertake an analysis of the costs and benefits of managing pests in the plan, and Council must be satisfied that the overall benefits of managing the pest through the Regional Pest Management Plan outweigh the costs. We're also required to consider whether the pest would be better managed through voluntary actions. So that could include land occupiers voluntarily doing the work themselves. What could also include whether catchment action plans or coordinated community efforts would be more effective. So the feedback we've received so far has largely come from the survey that we did earlier this year. And so we asked the public, which pest worry you the most? We received over 900 responses, and the top responses have been highlighted in the discussion document as the spotlight species. And so in that document, you'll see that this has included what we've termed the production pests, so rabbits, wallabies, gorse and broom, the predators, so that includes feral cats, possums, rats, mustelids, hooved animals such as feral deer, pigs, and goats, and also plant species such as pest conifers, willows and sycamores. And we also have what we've labelled the aquatic enemies. So this is lagrosiphon, yellow flag iris, and some of the emerging freshwater and marine pests. In this discussion document, you will see that for these spotlight species, we've provided some information on these species, on how they're currently managed. We've set out some specific questions that we're seeking your feedback on. So we're undertaking further engagement. And so we have this discussion document and an online feedback form, which is open until the 8th of July. We've also had community drop-in sessions. And so we've had several of these already, and we have 3 left to go. So we have one in Alex in Queenstown this week, and then one in Ranfurly next week. And so we're seeking further feedback on how you think we should manage pest species in Otago. As part of this engagement, there's some things to consider. So some of the work that's been done already has been an external effectiveness review that was completed in 2025. And what that identified was that there's been a lot of progress, but that there are challenges in achieving the current objectives in the plan. The review found that some species are on track to being achieved, or the objectives are on track to being achieved, but for others, there is more work to do. And the findings of this review are helping to inform how we manage pests in an updated plan. Some of the things we are considering and which we are seeking feedback on are which species to include in the plan, what are the best ways to manage these species, identified in the discussion document. We're seeking views on pathway management of freshwater and marine pests and what the public think of this approach. We want to know your views on the role of site-led programs and what the best way to protect biodiversity and cultural values is. So for example, is this through rules in a regional pest management plan, or is it through voluntary actions, or is it a combination of both, or something else? So in terms of next steps for getting involved, it's really to fill out that online feedback form, which is open till the 8th of July. In that online form, you will see that there are many questions. You do not have to answer every one of them. You can pick and choose the questions that you wish to answer. As I've said, there are still a few community sessions to attend if they're in your area. And then you can also get involved in the formal submission process in 2027. So thank you. That's, I guess, the end of the presentation for tonight. And I'll hand it over to you, Sophie.
Great. Thank you very much, Sam. Um, Now, with that, we will close up. We don't have any questions to answer at this stage, but if you do have something at a later stage, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you very much for your presentation, Sam, and a recording of this session will be made available online. Have a wonderful evening, everyone, and thank you again very much for attending. Ka kite.